Have approved medical marijuana, and Mick Cornett has advanced to a runoff in the race for governor. Good evening, I'm Dave Morris, the 10 p.m. update. Here from the Oklahoman's video studio, our election coverage continues throughout the night into the early mornings. And I'm joined on set, Ben Felder, Denwalt, over here to my left, and on my right, Kayla Branch, providing us with social media updates as well as the latest numbers. And Kayla, we'll start with you on state question 788.
Great. So yes, state question 788 has officially passed. Right now we have 56% for the yes and 43% for the no, with about 847,000 voters turning out for that. Less than 100 precincts left to report. There has been a wide showing of support. Also, people posting, negative comments, negative thoughts about the passage of the state question on social media. Governor Mary Fallin has released a statement talking about her thoughts. She says, "I respect the will of the voters and any question placed before them to determine the direction of our state. It is our responsibility as state leaders to look out for the health and safety of Oklahoma citizens. As I mentioned in previous public comments, I believe, as well as many Oklahomans, this new law is written so loosely that it opens the door for basically recreational marijuana. I will be discussing with legislative leaders and state agencies our options going forward on how to best proceed with adding a medical and proper regulatory framework to make sure marijuana use is truly for valid medical illnesses." Now, people have been commenting back to her. She released that statement on Twitter, and people have been tweeting back at her a lot of happiness that the state question passed, but also a lot of derogatory statements directed at Governor Mary Fallin herself. Also, the Oklahoma State Department of Health released a statement regarding the passage of the state question. And basically what I'm getting from their statement is that most of the regulations that people are worried about have already kind of been talked about and discussed. They've given some dates, so the Oklahoma State Board of Health will meet at its July 10th, and emergency rules governing the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority will be considered then. Application information and requirements will be available by July 26th, and those will be accepting applications no later than August 25th. So they've already got a lot of things in place.
Thank you, Kayla. Denwalt, this is a story you'll be following out there at the Capitol. What happens next?
Well, I think people who are worried that the legislature and the governor and the health department are going to come in and reverse the people's decision tonight, I don't think they have anything to worry about. Everyone that I've talked to have said that they're going to listen to what the people say. And a majority of Oklahomans tonight, of Oklahoma voters, said that they want medical marijuana in Oklahoma. What that looks like going from here on out remains to be seen. We know that the health department has already released draft rules that they're going to consider at this emergency meeting. They've been working on that for months. The legislature have been working behind closed doors on ways to, they say, improve the legislation. In talking to the House Majority Floor Leader, he says the one thing that we don't want to do is upset the will of the people here. And I think that's accurate, because everyone in the legislature is going to have to, all these House members and half the Senate are going to have to face voters again in November. So I think when we go into special session, I think it's a guarantee now, when we go into special session sometime in the next month, the legislature is going to work around the edges of this new law, and it might look a little bit different than what supporters of 788 thought it would, but ultimately we will have medical marijuana in Oklahoma.
Interesting stuff, and that brought a lot of people to the polls today to cast their votes, along with the race for governor. And as we mentioned off the top, Mick Cornett has advanced to a runoff in the race for governor. And we'll go back to Kayla with the latest numbers.
Yes, they are loading right now. So Mick Cornett finished out with 28.98% of the vote. And right now he's followed by Kevin Stitt with 24.48%, and Todd Lamb is in third with 24.05% of the vote. So that ended up being a very, very close race right there.
Still looking at that race, I believe, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, there's, out of almost 2,000 precincts, just 50 left to report the tight race between Stitt and Lamb. It looks like Stitt is going to advance, as of right now, to the runoff with Cornett in August. And this is really surprising. Not that Stitt advanced or Cornett advanced, but for months we've been talking a lot that it was probably Lamb in the lead, followed by Cornett and Stitt trying to battle it out for that final spot. This is also kind of surprising because we talked about this earlier in the night. If you go back 2 years ago and you started to look ahead to the governor's race, the one name you thought, hey, a likely name already as a candidate is going to be Lamb. He's been running for this seat for a long time, longer than any of their candidates. We didn't know about Cornett. We didn't know about Stitt. He had the connections, the lieutenant governor. He was positioned. He's traveled across the state quite a bit. He had the money. So if he ends up being the odd man out, so to speak, I think that's a big surprise.
Yeah. Everyone expected Todd Lamb would be the next governor after Mary Fallin. Obviously, in politics, you can't put money on anything. But if it turns out with 50 precincts remaining, Todd Lamb is down, about 2,000 votes or so. It's going to be shocking if he does not appear on the August 28th ballot.
And we're going to have, and this is going to be an interesting runoff because you're going to have Mick Cornett, the former mayor of Oklahoma City, really kind of trying to promote his role in helping revitalize the state capitol. Somewhat of a moderate, Stitt, very conservative, an outsider, a business owner is coming in saying, hey, it's time to shake things up. I mean, they're both probably going to be running as kind of an outsider. Cornett as, hey, I was running a city, I wasn't running the state capitol during a time when voter frustration continued to grow. But Stitt's really going to be playing his role as, hey, I'm new to politics, I'm coming in to run government as a business. It'll be interesting to see where Lamb voters shift in all this. You may make a case that Stitt, the more conservative between the two, and him and Cornett, maybe he picks up Lamb's votes, but maybe Cornett picks that up as someone who has good name recognition in the state and someone that a lot of people feel like they appreciate what he did in Oklahoma City. So it's going to be a really fascinating runoff if this holds, but right now it looks like it's going to be between Kevin Stitt and Cornett, an Oklahoma City versus Tulsa race right here.
Mm-hmm. As it turns out, we have a soundbite we'd like to play at this point because these two candidates, Stitt and Lamb, are separated by about 2,000 votes at this point. Our Chris Castile had an interview with the Oklahoma Election Board earlier this week, yesterday in fact, with Paul Zirix about recounts.
Oklahoma does not have a law providing for automatic recounts. In order to request a recount, a candidate in that particular race must request it, and they have to post a deposit. And then once they meet that threshold, then the county election boards that are involved will conduct they'll actually schedule a court hearing, and a judge will confirm that the ballots have been maintained securely, and if they have, then the judge will order the recount to proceed, and then the county election board does the recount at that point.
So whether it's Todd Lamb or Kevin Stitt, gentlemen, any ideas if one candidate or the other might trigger or request a recount?
It depends on how close it is. I think if it gets any closer, you could see Todd Lamb or whoever the odd man is, you might see them ask for a certain number of counties be looked at again. And that's fairly reasonable. Anytime you're within a percentage point of your opponent, you know that there might have been any number of ballots miscounted by the machines, although they are incredibly accurate. Anytime you do a recount, there's also always a couple of votes here and there that go either way.
Well, and this is what makes, this was such a crowded field. We're talking about these three candidates, and they've been kind of the focus of this race. But, you have Dan Fisher with 8% of the vote, Gary Richardson with 4% of the vote. That makes a big difference in such a tight race like this when you have such a crowded field like this. Yeah, it was always between Lamb, Cornett, and Stitt. But a lot of these other candidates that maybe didn't get a lot of attention still had a big impact on tonight's results.
Chatting with Ben Felder and Dale Denwalt about tonight's elections, and there are, of course, other races underway tonight. We go back to Kayla Branch with an update on some of those, including the 5th Congressional District.
For sure. So for the Democrats in the 5th Congressional District right now, we still have Kendra Horn leading. She's got 43%, almost 44% of the votes there. And she's followed by Tom Guild with 18%. So not a super close race, but still looking like we're going to have that runoff there. With the Republicans, Steve Russell, he totally swept them with 83% of the votes. We're missing about 13 precincts there, but nothing's gonna change there.
And guys, no surprise on the Steve Russell side of things, but a bit of a surprise on the Democratic side of things.
Yeah, and Horn's goal was to avoid the runoff. She's not wanting to go in. She's going to be the favorite going into August, going against Guild, but now she's going to have to spend money and time running in that Democratic primary. She would much rather go forward from tonight, focusing on Congressman Russell.
To that point, it seemed from the campaign emails and stuff that I saw from the candidate Horn, a lot of her message was focused against Russell.
Well, yeah. I mean, once again, I mean, I
right
think
from the beginning.
Yes. I mean, she's kind of been the front runner the entire time. She's focused on Russell, and you know, who knows how much she's going to have to spend to try to beat Guild. I mean, you see that, as Kayla said, you know, she's won or she led this primary by quite a bit, but she's still going to have to go into a runoff. And right now, everything matters if you're going to come up with a huge upset in beating Congressman Russell in the 5th Congressional District come November. That's a tall order. It's only going to happen if a lot of things go right. It's only going to happen if you see a major blue wave sweep across the country. You know, the 5th Congressional District would essentially be the cherry on top for Democrats in November. If they win CD5, it will be a great night for Democrats in November. But Horn, you know, would prefer to be able to focus on November, but this is how Oklahoma politics go. You got to get that 50% +1 in order to win your primary.
Should be focused on August 28th next.
Yeah, the runoff, yeah.
The runoff date in Oklahoma. Back to Kayla over here, more numbers. Senate District 40, which was interesting tonight.
It was very interesting. So right now we're missing on the Republican side one precinct reporting, and we've got Joe Howell with 59% and Irvin Yen, the incumbent, with just 40%. So the potential of a runoff there is very small.
And it wasn't. Yeah, there's two candidates there, so someone was going to win that. But I mean, as you said, I mean, Joe has won this. I mean, he's announced victory in this, and that's big because Senator Yen, the incumbent, as of right now, last time I checked, he was the only Senate incumbent to have lost his seat. This is Senate District 40 in Northwest Oklahoma City. You know, Joe Howell, a veterinarian, said that he really kind of campaigned on a message of giving parents a lot more say in the medical treatment of their children. Vaccinations is a big issue for him. He knocks off Yen. This is also big for Democrats. On the Democratic side, and Kayla, you probably were going to get to those numbers here, but Carrie Hicks, a 4th grade teacher, she's won a very close Democratic primary, so it'll be Hicks and Howell going off in November. And this is a Republican seat, but this is the Senate district that Democrats feel like they have the best chance to flip in the state Senate. And if you are the Democratic candidate, Hicks is, you didn't want to go against the incumbent. You'd much rather go against a challenger, you know, someone who's not going to have the fundraising advantage, the name recognition. So the Democrats, I think, are feeling pretty good about this seat, which will be between Hicks and Howell in November.
Interesting things. Kayla, let's skip ahead to State Superintendent, another race that we're following tonight.
For sure. So again, only Republican candidates with this race, and we've got Joy Hoffmeister, the incumbent, with 46.8% of votes, followed by Linda Murphy with 31% of votes, and Will Farrell with the 22.2% of votes. So not a super close race, but still a runoff is what's going to be coming up.
Yeah, and so this is surprising and not surprising. It's surprising because Hoffmeister, the incumbent, vastly out fundraised her two challengers, was expected to win this. And a lot of people thought that she would win it outright and avoid a runoff. She remains very popular with educators. She kind of aligned with them during the walkout. She didn't publicly endorse it, but she was very visible at the state capitol. So you felt like she had a good chance to win this. Why this may not be surprising that she's headed to a runoff is because in a Republican primary, you probably had a lot of conservative voters who went to the polls today saying, you know what, education, you know, is kind of in a state of disrepair right now. So I'm not going to vote for the incumbent. I want to see change. And they may not have known much about the incumbent, but felt like they wanted to go in a new direction. Some who did know about Hoffmeister probably felt like maybe I didn't appreciate the fact that she did align with teachers. There were plenty of conservatives across the state, you know, who were not on the side of what they saw as a teacher union-led walkout that shut down schools for 2 weeks. So initially surprising when I saw this results, but when you start to unpack it a little bit, maybe not so surprising that we're going to see Hoffmeister have to go through a runoff in August.
There'll be lots of unpacking over the next few days in the Oklahoman and online at newsok.com, and heavy construction outside the window right now. Back to Kayla for one final race, State Attorney General.
Again, another race where we only had the Republican candidates, and we've got Mike Hunter in the lead, the incumbent. He has 44.48% of votes, followed by Gentner Drummond with 38.54% of votes, and in third place, Angela Bonilla with 16.98% of the votes.
Yeah, it looks like if people were tired of all the Attorney General ads on TV.
Well, guess what?
Well, you got a few more weeks left of that. One of my friends texted me out of the blue last night, and he said, so many AG ads, and he said he actually loves watching the ads. He's kind of a Politico nerd.
Well, I will say this much, from the video production side of things, both of those are well done. We know one's a fighter pilot. We know the other one, J.C. Watts, is, you know, endorsing. They're both slick ads.
There's a lot of activity in this race, and I think if you ask Attorney General Mike Hunter, it comes down to his opposition to the opioid drug industry, and whether or not that's the case, we've got a contest here. That's pitting someone who is actively, fighting as hard, seemingly as hard as he can against the opioid industry, making it sort of his pillar of his campaign and his term so far as the appointed Attorney General, versus Gendert Drummond, who is doing all he can to throw darts at Mike Hunter.
It's been very contentious.
Mm-hmm.
Can't avoid this race for sure. All right, Kayla, great job there on the update desk. We certainly appreciate your time and efforts tonight. Gentlemen, as you look back at tonight, what's the big takeaway?
Well, I think one of the big takeaways, and we kind of knew this going in, was just the interest from voters. I mean, primary turnouts are typically low. We saw the turnout seems to be a lot higher today. We saw almost 800 candidates file earlier this year for this race. I mean, voter frustration has been increasing over the last couple of years. I already mentioned it earlier, but the 2-week teacher walkout, I mean, it definitely has an impact one way or the other on the political state of things. And right now there's just a lot of frustration, and in some districts voters are wanting to see change, and others they're remaining with the incumbent. But I mean, this is a big political year, and as we talked about earlier tonight, it's kind of an unusual political year here.
And talking about frustrated voters, before we went on air, I counted, and there are about 6, maybe even at least 6 state house lawmakers who could tonight find themselves out of a job because the voters picked the other guy or the other gal in some cases. If we can take a quick look at Kevin McDougal, if you could search for him in the results. I want to see how many precincts are still left. Before that, I'll say Greg Babinek, the last that I saw, he was getting trounced by John Talley.
McDougal in State Representative District 12, Republican side of things.
Yep. So how many precincts are reporting there? Is it just...
We got 1 precinct to go. McDougal is leading by 4 votes.
By 4, okay. That's going to be an interesting one. His opponent, Nick Mahoney, in the Republican primary, actually stopped campaigning about a month ago. He hung up his campaign boots. He said, listen, I found a good job. My family, were supporting me on this, and I'm just going to stop campaigning.
So Mahoney says, I'm good. McDougal picked up 4 votes. 4 people.
And I just got off the phone with Nick, and he said that if the voters choose to send him to the general election, he is going to start campaigning again.
He'll pick it back up.
He will. He certainly will.
Back in the game.
Yeah. And so looking at maybe 6, plus or minus a couple, depending on how the last couple of precincts turn out. And also counting 10 lawmakers, 10 sitting lawmakers who are going to go into runoff elections because a majority of voters tonight pick somebody else.
And that's really unheard of. I mean, like looking at recent election history, I mean, incumbents win. That's just kind of that's kind of the rule of thumb in Oklahoma politics, and it's not that way across the board tonight.
The Oklahoman Silas Allen, along with our Tanner Harriet, were at the Todd Lamb watch party. Todd Lamb has congratulated candidates Cornett and Stitt.
Wow.
There you have it. More election coverage can be found tonight on newsok.com. Video and plenty of stories from my colleagues right on the other side of this wall in the Oklahoman's newsroom. Again, a big thanks to Kayla Branch for her help tonight. Gentlemen Ben Felder, Dale Denwalt here on set. We had Justin Wingeter with us earlier tonight. Todd Frazier, Greg Singleton, Paige Dillard back behind that wall in the control room. Thanks to everybody for watching, and good night.